Hi again, everyone. This video is sponsored by contribution from Daisy, and here is her story. Hi, Ollie. I really love your YouTube channel and get lots of comfort from listening to other people's stories. I'm a 43-year-old mother of two and heavy in recovery right now. I'm writing both to share my story and also get some advice. My parents were never physically or sexually abusive. There was some boundary crossing, but sometimes I imagine that I am misremembering even that. Mostly my parents engage in something I've come across to think of as brain rape. I guess it's like emotional abuse plus gaslighting plus something else, but that's more my dad. He's the actual obvious narcissist of the two, and oddly, he's the one I find easier to deal with. My mom is a covert narcissist. She tries to convince me of things, brain rape me, but doesn't really get in my head since she's not all that convincing. What she has in her arsenal is she flies into hysterical rages. When she gets agitated and upset, it's like a storm brewing. Then she explodes in a burst of anger that can go on and on if the person she's raging at doesn't capitulate. Well, that makes sense. I mean, you know what to expect from your father because he's more overt. Your mother, who's on covert and constantly thinking she's hiding her agenda, but you know it's coming, and it's that anticipation that makes it so uncomfortable, is why you find it so much harder to deal with her than him, because you know what you're dealing with him. With her, you're waiting and waiting and waiting, and it's that stress, and that's what she gets off on as well. I went no contact with everyone in my family this summer after they were horrible to me and my kids during the visit back east. At the time, I never wanted to speak to either of my parents again, and since my mom rules the family with her temper, that meant cutting off literally everyone. My brothers, uncles, cousins. There was no one in my extended family that I could feel like I could talk to because it all flows through. I don't want to use her name. Let's call her M. To everyone else, M is this lovely, charming woman. She's a bit wacky, but fun and sweet. Honestly, even I'm enamored with that vision of her. I've I've had ex-boyfriends who keep in touch with her, even if they aren't in touch with me. As for my dad and brothers, they know they will fall into her displeasure if they have a relationship with me without going through her. I only really see my family when I visit her, and even then I get a taste of her anger and don't interact with my family in ways pre-approved by her. Like if I do an activity she doesn't like surfing or bike riding, she's only happy if I'm playing tennis or sailing, which are things she likes. Yeah, that's like drunky. Unless you're an asshole if you do anything that they don't agree with. Okay? You know, your mother's a bully and she thinks she can bully the family, but somebody's going to have to stand up to her. I'm not saying it's you. Anyway, I stopped being no contact and have now agreed to email. Why? But my mom occasionally has these freakouts where she sends me multiple emails and tries to call me and my husband. I have blocked her on my phone, but sometimes the calls get through, and even though I don't pick up, it still upsets me. Well, if I don't understand how they're getting through it if she's blocked. But this wouldn't be a problem if you didn't break no contact. What does she do to have you break to earn you back in her life? Nothing. Seems like you're going back out of fear for her and of loneliness of your family. But if your family really gave a shit, they'd stand up to her, and they don't. Your family just wants you to capitulate and be in the same misery they all are, or they want you to believe they are. If anyone is around when this happens, they don't understand why I don't pick up. After all, my mom is so nice. Yes, that's sarcastic. She just wants to check up on me. Why am I such a mean meanie not to talk to her? At this point, I want to go back in time so you can understand why I have issues with my parents. Because even now, I feel like I have to defend why I find them so painful to deal with. Here it goes. You never have to defend. They know. My parents had me young. My mom was 21. My dad was 23. They had no idea what they were doing, so they let my grandparents parent. I spent as much time with my maternal grandmother, who was an abusive alcoholic, as I did with my own mother. Then when I was almost walking, they had me on vacation in Europe with my dad's family, and I got sick with a horrible stomach thing and almost died. It was not their fault, but a relative did feed me some sketchy milk, and that's what made me sick. I was tied down in a hospital bed with an IV and feeding tube. I recovered, but according to family lore, it was a huge ordeal for my mother. After that, I was passed around with relatives, but my family had lots of money, so it wasn't like I was wanting for anything material. When I was two, when I was 2.5, my parents moved to New York City, and things got hard. The second day we lived there, my mom lost me in a grocery store. I walked across the street to go home because I couldn't find her. I got in lots of trouble then, as well as future times it happened, because my mom lost me on 4 different occasions between the ages of 2 and 9, all for long enough that I either walked home or started walking home. That's not counting the 2 times she forgot to pick me up from school. I have 2 kids of my own. The longest, the longest I lost one of my kids was 5 minutes in Target. It was the longest 5 minutes of my life. How could someone lose their child as much as my mom lost me? My mother would lose me constantly and never looked. Never looked. I mean, she could lose me in Bamberger's or Abraham and Strauss or Nationals or whatever friggin' large store, because kids. And my mother was just like this in a store because it was all about looking for sales and she didn't even know I was missing. Didn't even know I was missing. Anyway, I was always great at school, and that was an area of pride for me. I knew my parents were impressed, and I did a lot to maintain my status as a good kid. I got every word right on spelling tests. My mom says I could cook an entire meal by the time I was 7, which was good because my dad couldn't even boil spaghetti. Moms at the playground always asked if I could babysit their children because they didn't realize I was still in grade school. If I ever had trouble with homework, I couldn't ask my parents because they would start fighting with each other. Also, they'd pull me out of school for long periods of time to go on vacation, so I had to work really hard to stay good. I had a brother 4 years younger than me, and it didn't take long to notice that they offered him toys for eating his vegetables, whereas I got a spanking if I didn't eat them. But I figured it was normal to favor the younger kid. Then they told me that my 3-year-old brother had a speech impediment because I never stopped talking. And if he drops his ice cream, they take away mine and give it to him. They told me it was my job to take care of him, and I took that job extremely seriously. In second and third grade, I'd have nightmares of him drowning and being unable to stop it. When I was 8, I started taking the public bus to school. For some reason, my parents didn't get me a bus pass. My mother only gave me money for the first week or so. After that, she told me to look in the drawers or in the couch. My aunt had gotten really sick by then, and my mom must have been depressed. But it got harder and harder to find cash, and I started to gyp the bus driver. Eventually, he called me out and told me I had to get off the bus. I cried and paid, and a nice lady paid, but I was really embarrassed. We clearly had money. You could tell by my school uniform. There was never change for the bus. At this point, I want to say maybe I'm whining. I guess the bus money thing is not a big deal, but I've been in far worse financial straits than my parents ever were, and I never would have expected my kids to figure out how to get themselves to school without money for transport. My mom got pregnant again with a baby she didn't want. This wasn't a huge deal as she hadn't planned me either, but since her sister was sick, she became a bit of a mess. Oh, I forgot to mention, my parents started sending me on a plane alone to see my grandparents overseas when I was 5. These were the same grandparents who got me sick as an infant. For what it's worth, they still drank unhomogenized, unpasteurized milk. But by this time, the myth of how strong I was had sprung up, and everyone in my family seemed to think I was invincible. I went every summer, and once my brother reached age 5, my parents sent him with me. There was this belief in my family that I was so strong and smart and my mom was so weak. She couldn't handle anything while I could handle everything. Looking back, it's crazy that I believed this when I was 6 or 7 years old, but I guess that's what it's like with toxic parents. We moved to the suburbs when I was 9. I was terrified. The country seemed really foreign. I was terrified of boys since I'd been in an all-girls school since then. Unfortunately, I was hitting puberty. My mom said I was too old for Halloween and kid stuff like toys, but I was also too young to be allowed to make my own plans. Ages 9 through 14 were a nightmare. My mom's sister was horribly sick and eventually died. It was super sad. I'd come downstairs some mornings to learn that my mom had left town. I made lunches for my brother every day. In junior high, I ate a cookie for lunch every day because I could only scrounge 50 cents out of the couches, drawers, and jacket pockets. I guess I could have brought lunch, but none of the cool kids did, and I didn't want to be more of an outcast than I already was. So I suppose the cookies were my fault. Unsurprisingly, I got fat, and my parents were horrified. My mom was super attractive and we were upper middle class, so my weight was really an embarrassment. I guess I wasn't fat by today's standards, but in the 80s, you were supposed to be thin. Starting when I was 11, my mom put me on diets. My dad would catch me putting food in my mouth and make me spit it out. He made fun of me in front of my friends. They commented over and over again about how I wasn't athletic. Every dinner with extended family would circle around my weight and what I should do to lose it. By maybe 14 or 15, my parents sometimes would need the boys to be picked up from school, and they'd leave car keys on the table by the door. Even though I didn't have a driver's license, I did pick up my brothers. I even took the dog to the vet when he got sick. My parents didn't teach me to drive, by the way. I taught myself. At 15, I guess I'd had it with sucking and failing at everything, so I started dieting intensely. I lost 16 pounds in a couple of weeks, then kept it up until I dropped from 134, what my parents thought was fat, to 98 pounds. It's crazy to say it, but that may have been the first time in my life I felt successful. My parents were all upset, though, and I didn't understand why. I just managed to do what they'd been wanting me to do for 4 years, i.e. get thin, because they didn't want you to get thin. They didn't want you to get thin. They wanted you to be a target for them to bully. The shit pretty much hit the fan after that. I started to be very pissed at my parents for how they bragged to their friends about my grades. I can't recall how I said it, but I definitely confronted them repeatedly about how they used to make themselves look good and how I didn't appreciate it. Also, how I would never be good enough. For some reason, they were really overprotective at this point, and I was furious that they never cared what I was doing when I was little. But now that I was a teenager, suddenly they decided to be authority figures. As far as I was concerned, they needed me to parent them half the time. How dare they tell me what to do? That's when the brain rape really started. They decided that if they couldn't tell me what to do, they would convince me what to think. They disagreed with literally everything I said. Everything. In my dad's case, this is common, but it intensified. But they both started psychoanalyzing me constantly. Why did I believe this? Why don't I understand that? They constantly reminded me that we had mental illness in the family and accused me of being on drugs. Yes, I did experiment back then and I hung out with the bad kids, but I was always the girl taking care of the stoners. I was always the least high or the least drunk. I drove the drunk people home even before I had a license, and I didn't even like pot because it made me paranoid. At that age, I really thought I was losing my mind. I remember my dad following me around the house, talking and talking and talking. He was a lawyer and he knew how to spin everything. He tried to get in my head so long and hard that I'd bang my skull against the wall to get him to leave me alone. Looking back, I realized I was disassociating a lot back then. I was always so spacey, as they called it. I used to be really scared that I would start hallucinating and lose touch with reality completely. I wonder what kind of scumbag shitbird lawyer he actually is. Because remember, the narcissist always has you on trial. So you have a lawyer and a spoiled cunt of a mother. So it shouldn't be any shock to you what's going on here. Looking back, I realized I was dissociating a lot back then. I was also so spacey, as they called it. I used to be really scared that I would start hallucinating and lose touch with reality completely. Somehow I convinced my parents to let me go to boarding school, and it was the best thing ever. I had structure and could focus on school. Meanwhile, my mom didn't have to bitch about my dad anymore. So they finally got divorced. I started a long process of being barely civil to my dad and very close to my mom, but only seeing her during school breaks. Everything settled down for a very long time. At 27, I met the man I would marry. My parents met him and DH, and I became engaged. Unfortunately, he displeased my mother, and she threw a bleeding from the eyeballs fit at him, the likes which I hadn't seen since my childhood. It was really bad, and I didn't talk to her for a while, but I was getting married, so I brushed it under the rug. How did he react? That's what I would wonder. How did he react to that? Everyone came to the wedding and tried to be nice, though my family had decided they hated my husband. 2 days after my wedding, my parents cornered me to lecture me about how my husband was a gold digger. The worst part was I was already pregnant during that intervention, so I was married to and carrying a baby of the guy they were telling me to get an annulment from. I don't know why I stayed in touch with him. I'm a doormat. But I felt guilty at the notion of keeping them from my granddaughter, and I figured their concerns were out of love for me. That's what they told me, and it was easier to think they loved me than to consider they were selfish narcissists who wanted to control me. You know, I knew my parents wanted to control me when Erin was born, and I tried to keep her away at first, and then that same guilt, and it was a mistake. A mistake I'm paying for to this day. Things remained civil until one time DH and I visited my mom. Oh, dear husband. And I visited my mom when my first kid was 2. The plan was to spend a couple days with my mom before going to my brother's wedding. Since husband and I weren't allowed to leave my mom's house, my husband had a friend over. The guy was kind of boorish, and my mom flipped. She kicked my husband out of the house and said he was never allowed to come back. I had to take a cab away from there with my 2-year-old and all our luggage because my husband left on foot, which I told him to do because I was scared my mom might hurt him, me, or myself, and I didn't want my toddler to have to watch the sordid Jerry Springer-esque scene any longer. All right, wait a minute, I gotta stop here. Why did you? I don't care what you said to your husband, like. I wouldn't leave my wife and 2-year-old with a stark raving lunatic no matter what she said. He should have gotten right in her fucking face. That you ever talk to, we're done with you. Don't ever, like, he's the one who should really be stepping up at this point. Then I still went to my brother's wedding without my husband. Am I a doormat or what? I really can't believe I did that. Why did I go? I missed the ceremony because my daughter was napping. The wedding party was at a place that didn't allow kids, so I had to keep my toddler on the down low the whole time. I know you're probably thinking I'm the biggest loser ever right now, and you're probably right, but I'm the strong one, remember? I'm the one that's so smart and capable and can withstand everything. My mom is weak, so they say. So I thought I was being the bigger person by going to a wedding where I was barely invited while carrying a child where my husband had been banished. Yeah, I suck. Well, I don't understand why your husband would have allowed you to go to that wedding. You're pregnant at the time, your hormones are off, you've been dealing with this emotional trauma with these people your entire life. Why is your husband not stepping up and saying, fuck this? You're not going anywhere. And he should be the one making it clear. Stay the fuck away from me and my wife and my grandchildren and my children. You are out. That is what your husband should be doing. And you should not be telling him otherwise. Anyway, after that, I went 10 years with my mom and husband not talking. During this time, I dutifully brought my kids home to see her every summer. For those 2 weeks, I didn't mention my husband's name or talk about anything that would upset her. I'd buy all special clothes for the trip so she wouldn't be upset about the shoddy stuff we wore normally. Even if I had come out to her visit, I even had her come out to visit my home a few times, but only when husband was away for work. I cannot express what a toll this took on me and my marriage. My husband is really dedicated and understanding, but this rift made me question both my family and marriage, and mostly made me want to disappear off the face of the earth. Also, I'd entered onto a perpetual state phase of my parents being unimpressed and dismissive of anything I did career-wise. As a mother, I didn't like working full-time, so I found part-time work that would allow me to be home with my toddlers. To my parents, however, this was a waste. They blamed my husband for not helping enough, like as if he had stolen their chance of having their daughter they could brag about. Just pointing out that my mom never had a job in her life. Boy, if this doesn't tie in with the last video I just did, huh? 43-year-old raised by baby boomers again. Here we go. If this doesn't talk about exactly what I was talking about with these baby boomers, do as I say, not as I do, not as I did. None of this should be surprise to you at this point. None of it. Eventually, my mom and husband were able to be cordial again, and they have gotten together at family functions. But then me and husband decided to move further away from my parents this year, and things got weird again. Mom started grumbling about him, even bringing up the fact that we don't have a prenup. She got mean, and when I went to visit her over the summer, it just reached a breaking point. I was tired from moving and grumpy about having the visit at a time really inconvenient to me. I didn't want to dress in the clothes I always wear when I see her. I didn't care if my kids had the right haircuts or looked presentable for her. I was just done. My kids are adolescents now, and mother is getting agitated by their growing up. My dad was following my 11-year-old around trying to convince her of things. My 11-year-old is very perceptive and shocked by their behavior. It embarrassed me. If an 11-year-old could see they were being dicks, why was I putting up with this? During the visit, Mom started drinking every day at 3:30, and at 6:30 p.m. she was always throwing a fit. Literally, she would get mad at everything, at nothing. It was like clockwork. Me and my kids joked to my dad and my brother. Me and my kids joked to my dad that my brother was the favorite, and Dad said that's because he's the only one who's made anything of his life, which honestly might not have even bothered me if he'd said it in private, but he said it in front of my children. Finally, I just had enough. Every time I'm visiting, I would end up storming out of a meal, but this time I stormed out of their lives. I ran for it, taking my kids with me. It was really terrifying, believe it or not. I was so brainwashed that I thought my mother would send the police after me. I worried that mother would come up with ways to take away my kids. She really doesn't have that power, but after 2 weeks at her house, I felt like she did. And I feel shitty for putting my kids through everything. Part of me thinks I should have kept up appearances so my kids could have a stable relationship with their grandparents. But I really felt like if I stayed, I would have killed myself. What kind of stable relationship is it with if the grandparents are telling you what a piece of shit you are and everything is? How is that stable? Though I cut them off entirely after that, they wouldn't stop contacting me. I blocked them one place only to see them try to reach me in another. They use family members to try to get to me. They contact my husband. One of my brothers is a flying monkey and also a massive enabler. And I'm sad that I can't trust him anymore because he used to be my good friend. I think my brothers blame me for leaving home. They don't realize the major reason they are not as fucked up as I am is they had a halfway decent, loving, responsible parent figure, me. I totally saw them as my kids when I was a tween and teen. I know they will never remember how it was me who woke them up from nightmares or brought them food when my grandmother would send them to bed without dinner for some silly made-up reason. But I can see it sucked for my brothers when I left because I wasn't around to blunt the effects of our parents. And since Mom is almighty and a perpetual victim, it's my fault as the strong one for leaving my little brothers alone. A couple months after I stormed out, I agreed to talk to my parents via email. First we fought, but then I tried to be civil. It was okay at first, but the election has made my mom angry and snappy. Then last week, an old, please tell me she's a Hill dog. Please tell me she was for Hillary. Last week, an old friend came to visit. I hadn't invited her. I just hadn't said no clearly enough. During her visit, she was really overbearing and pushy, very much like my family. In fact, she sort of adopted part of the family. When she left, I mentioned being annoyed at her to my mom in an email. But unbeknownst to me, my so-called friend had already emailed my mother, filling her in on everything going on in my life. Despite said friend knowing I'm barely talking to my mother. I'm furious. How could this friend think it's okay to go behind my back? And why does everyone take my mom's side? Money. 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 Anyway, M went off on this email rant about how how I had to be kind to my poor friend because she doesn't have much and was probably lonely, and I was so lucky to have my husband and kids, and I was the strong one, and I just snapped. I just fucking snapped. I snapped. I sent M this email about how friend is no way disadvantaged, that her life is formed by her own choices, and I have my own damn problems, including parents who convince me that everyone in the world is more deserving in love and sympathy than me. My mom is probably furious. I have no doubt that her next email will say, never talk to me again. But oh, how I wish it were that simple. It's become clear that she will never stop hounding me. Even if she feigns cutting me off, she won't. I'm too good of a narcissistic extension. Meanwhile, I've lost relationships with everyone in the family because no one is going to go behind her back or my dad's back to talk to me. Even if they did talk to me, I'm sure they'd eventually try to convince me to play nice with the crazy lady. But what do I do? I'm so sick of being a doormat. I can't stand up to anyone, even people outside my family. I mean, I know I'm getting better with every counseling session. I'm getting better knowing who I am and what I want. It's a process. But as I do that, my parents intensify their efforts to brainwash me. My dad already sent the obligatory series of emails about how he thinks I need to seek psychological help and or treatment for totally non-existent drug problem. By the way, the drugs, they mean antidepressants. They think antidepressants is making me so difficult and rebellious. What in the hell am I supposed to do? Do I cut my parents out of my life entirely? Then what about the uncles and cousins I actually want to be in touch with? Is this fair to my kids to break their ties with family? They love their cousins. How can I engage any of them if I don't want to be treated like a doll or a black sheep to boot? Is it worth trying to train my parents to be nicer? I can't tell. I'm 43. I want to live my life. I want to joyously share my gifts with the world rather than be locked in a perpetual state of self-doubt. So what's your advice? Well, why you haven't gone no contact already, I mean, is beyond me. Getting your kids away from your family should be your priority. Okay? Because you've already demonstrated their desire to poison them mentally, to do the same thing to you that they did, that do the same thing to them that they did to you. And you know what the little caveat cherry on top is going to be on that was when they turn your own children against you. Yeah, that's what they're going to try to do. These are bad people. All of them. All of them. If your brothers don't remember who raised them, then fuck them. Then fuck them. If you're the one taking care of them in grade school, okay, and then they're going to capitulate to that narcissistic cunt of a bitch, okay, who's never worked a day in her fucking little entitled, spoiled cunt life, okay, You don't need them. They're telling you, look, I know this hurts and I know it sucks, and I understand what it's like to not be in touch with family, but you're better off without them. You should be banned from any communication with them whatsoever. Now, I don't know what the situation is with your husband, but I'm going to give you the same advice I've given to a couple other women in your situation with husbands who will not step up. I don't know if he's not stepping up, if you're really like losing it with your husband to get him to back off, but if that's happening, it needs to stop. Okay? And you need to turn to your husband and say, look, I can't do this. I can't trust myself with this. I need you, when they contact me, to get to go back and say, stop contacting my wife, stop contacting me, stop contacting my children. You are done. You're done. The family members are done. You are all done until the day comes that you publicly apologize and admit to all of the shitty things you've done to her throughout her entire life, and to me and to my children. Until that day comes, go fuck yourselves. And all communications need to be handled by your husband. By your husband. And they will, and that may back them off. Or it may ramp them up a little more. But you need to be able to have your husband readily available if they ever show up. Say they're here, boom. Boom. This isn't your fight anymore. You can't handle this. All right? You've been too emotionally abused. Your husband, the father of your children, who are being exposed to all this fuckery, needs to step up, put on his big boy pants, and take control of his marriage. Okay? You've suffered enough. You've suffered enough. He's let you get abused enough. Now, I'm not saying he's necessarily letting, because you're sending him away, but you wouldn't have been able to send me the fuck away. There was no sending me away when I was protecting my ex-wife when she was pregnant with Aaron. There was no sending me away. He can't, and you can't. If he tells you not to go something with them, don't do it. Don't do it. You have to talk to him and say, I can't trust myself. I need you to help me here. And the day may come when you can trust yourself. But that ain't right now. Because you're still trying to figure out a way to have some kind of normal relationship. And it's never going to happen. I cannot hammer this into you strongly enough. It's never going to happen. They are never going to stop abusing you. They are never going to stop manipulating you. And they will never stop mind raping you. They will just look for new targets to turn against you. And they got the best ones. Your children. If you're not going to do it for yourself, you need to do it for your children. Because your children shouldn't see you being abused like this and shouldn't see their father walking away from it. This is what they're seeing right now. So what are they going to be like if this continues when they try to have relationships and get... Look at what they're observing. They can't. You can't do it. It's over no matter what. It's better they see their parents keeping these crazy people out of their lives at all costs than for them to be exposed by their narcissistic tactics. At least then they'll understand the true meaning of what a family is supposed to do for each other. So, thank you for your contribution and story. I really hope this helps, and thank you to everybody watching. Please leave any advice or opinions in the comment section below. And again, if you want your story read on the channel, you have a topic you'd like me to cover or a narcissist you'd like to expose, you know what to do with my PayPal link and my email address in the description box. And remember, when you do send me your story, to please put at the top of the email whether it's with or without contribution and what name you'd like to go by. This is Ollie Matthews. Thanks for watching. See you all again shortly.